So I wanted to talk today about cognitive functions as superpowers. Sometimes we look at cognitive functions as if there's some mystical, magical thing that one type can do and other types can't. But that's not really how it works. Extroverted feeling isn't some kind of superpower. I can't just feel what my neighbor is feeling because I have extroverted feeling. I can't just feel what people in the room are feeling just because I have extroverted feeling. These are cognitive processes, patterns of processing information. So those with extroverted feeling aren't just picking up the energy from other people that no one else can see, right? They're focusing on certain types of information that others aren't. So if you watch my other video about emotional signals and how those link to our values, you'll see that is one of the big things that we're picking up on. We see people's emotional responses and we're trying to figure out what their values are that underlie those emotional responses. There's nothing really magical about it. It's just we're focused on that type of information because our thought patterns tell us that that is the information that is the most important. So when we think about cognitive functions as something mystical and magical, a superpower, we're kind of confusing what's going on because it's not so much that the type has some innate ability that other types don't have. They're just focused on a certain type of information rather than another type. Like, say you go into a candy store, you're going to be focused on the types of candies that you're interested in. You're not going to be focused on the ones that you're not. I don't know why I'm using candy as an example, but these are just the patterns that you've kind of ingrained in yourself, and that's where your mind naturally goes. You have to kind of consciously shift away from where you're comfortable already. So if you go to a restaurant that you've been to a bunch of times, your mind's going to automatically go to, oh, these are like the things I've tried before. These are things I'm comfortable with. And then you kind of consciously choose something else. Or maybe you are OE and you naturally go, oh, I've had that before, I want to do something else. That is another pattern, right? Your mind is automatically going to that previous experience and then making a choice based off of that. Either way, you're considering that previous experience and then basing your decision off of that known experience. So you're either going, oh, I'm comfortable here, maybe I should get this, or you're going, oh, I've had that before, let me try something else. Because the cognitive functions are the lens with which we view the world. They're the lens with which we process all this information. So everything that I am processing is through this filter of extroverted feeling and extroverted sensing. I'm seeing what is here in reality, and I'm saying what does that imply afterwards. So it's all based on what I can see, what can that imply. That's the SE and the NI. Then I'm also seeing what is valued and how can I contribute to those areas that are valued. What are the things that I can figure out to better things for everyone? The Introverted Intuitive is looking to the future and trying to synthesize these ideas. How is everything going to continue to exist in the way that it has in the past? What are the underlying patterns to all of this? They are projecting and guessing just like everybody else. They are addicted to the possibilities and the abstractions rather than what is and can be experienced right in front of them. This kind of gives them the ability to predict and look into the future, but they don't just know the future. There's nothing mystical about it. It's just they have an orientation towards that information, so they're seeing how these things are intertwining and connecting towards that future state, what the underlying patterns are. This gives them the power to synthesize trends and see where things are going. It isn't a superpower. There's nothing mystical about this. It's just their minds are focused on the future and how these trends are forming towards that future point so that they can make accurate guesses. But this comes at a cost of knowing what's actually going on in the moment. They're not focused on what can be done now because they're so focused on where things are going. Now, I'm not saying all this to discount the gifts that we all naturally have. On the contrary, I think it's great that everybody has these different perspectives and that they can share them with one another to contribute to a more diverse and knowledgeable society. I just think that over-mystifying these patterns as something that we can't all do really discredits what these patterns really are. It makes it seem like something unnatural when it's actually something very natural. These are processes that we all have. We all share these ways of thinking. I just think that over mystifying these ideas makes them unapproachable. It's hard to understand what they're doing if we can't all do it. The truth is that we can. We can all look towards the future trends. It's just not the way a lot of us are thinking, because we all have different ways of processing this type of information. And even those of us who do, we don't necessarily think of ourselves as doing that. I think there's a far greater truth in acknowledging that these different types of information exist and that we can all see them, and we all have functions which interact with them and process these types of information, but our orientation is unique towards them depending on our type. If we acknowledge that these spectrums of information exist, we can acknowledge that, oh yeah, I think about that, but that's true. I guess I do tend to think about one more than the other. I do tend to start with this sort of information and then move towards this type of information. There's one I'm more comfortable with to start with. To me, this just comes off as genuinely more true. It just seems believable that we would have these spectrums of information and we would focus on one more than the other. Even if it's very slight and kind of hard to tell most of the time, those little edges, they add up over time, and that's what causes the problems in our life if we are neglecting that other side of the information too much. We see that if we're going to overfocus on one type of information, we're going to create a void in the other. If I am personally invested in my intuitive patterns, my and I, then I will be less personally invested in the actual sensory within those patterns. Because to me, what's personal is the pattern, not so much the description of it. It's that underlying trend, that underlying abstraction that is truly the thing that I'm forming. The stuff that connects to it is just stuff, right? It's that underlying piece that matters to me. These are important differences. Different people caring about different types of things is good and diversifies our culture. But it's also important for us to see the ways in which we align so that we can connect with one another. And one of the ways in which we align is that we all have the ability to do all of these things. We all have the ability to see and process all types of information. It's just which is the lens with which you're viewing the world. What is your natural perspective? We all have our natural areas of focus, so it can seem strange and out of the ordinary when someone isn't viewing the world in the way that we are, just as someone from a different culture would view the world a different way than we are. If we want to think of functions as superpowers, then we also have to acknowledge the fatal flaws that come with those superpowers. With my abundance of FE, I can see that other people don't necessarily value the things that make sense to me. I see the way that I'm doing things, and I see that it doesn't necessarily measure up. That is one of my fatal flaws. I'd be interested to see what you guys think of this. I just want to get the point across that functions aren't a superpower and that there's some kind of magical thing, because it is something that we're all capable of. But if you want to think of yourself as having a superpower, something that you're good at, then I'm all for it. If you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. I'm going to try and keep putting out videos like this. It's not been easy for me to get these ideas out to you. I'm definitely having to do quite a bit of editing to cut out some of the pauses and all that crap that I'm running into while trying to get these ideas out. I really want to share what I'm thinking about and trying to process here with you guys. So appreciate you sticking around. See you guys next time. There's nothing really magical about it. Those little edges, they add up over time.